Welcome to The Deepest Cut, a podcast about the movement from painful experiences to meaningful music. I'm your host, Matt Connor. We've all heard the story wrapped up with a bow. The heartbreak followed by healing, the darkness quickly chased away by the light. But what if a song or a story ends in the valley? Like, what if it stays there? There's always room and reason for hope, obviously, but sometimes I think we're a bit too quick to move beyond the doubt and despair. Sometimes such seasons stay with us, or us with them, and company is needed in those moments as well. That's the reason why Greg Lafollette wanted to make sure and highlight the prayer uttered in Psalm 88. Now, even if you're not sure you've heard Greg's work, I'm actually positive that you have. Not only has Greg offered up beautiful resources for the church over the years, which, by the way, includes a worship series for kids, he's also played with and produced for many other artists, from Sandra McCracken and Sarah Groves to Andrew Peterson and All Sons and Daughters. On this episode of The Deepest Cut, Greg chose to discuss his song Psalm 88, which is subtitled Darkness is My Closest Friend. It's a track written from the midst of a painful season, and as he details, he wanted to craft something for those still in the thick of the pain, offering worship that doesn't rush to resolve, but instead lingers in lament. It's heavy, it's also holy, and it's an honest look at what it means to trust God in the dark. Here's my conversation with Greg Lafollette here on The Deepest Cut. Hello, welcome to The Deepest Cut. We have a new episode here with my friend Greg Lafollette. So glad to have you here. Greg, normally I go right into here's who this person is, but I just feel like you wear more hats. Actually, right now you're wearing a Kansas City hat native to your home, but the metaphorical hats you wear are actually many. And I wanted you, because I know there's not just your own songs. You actually write songs in different lanes for your own self, but then you're involved in songs in so many other ways for so many others. Like just to distill that down for people who are like, oh, I only know him from one lane and not some others. Well, hello, by the way.
Hey, good to see you. Hear you, right? Yeah, so I have worked in studio environments for going on 20 years, really close to 20 years, and worked on hundreds of records in a lot of different capacities as an intern, as an unpaid intern, as a paid intern, engineering, production, as well as sort of, performing on records and songwriting. And I've done touring as a sideman. And I currently work part-time at a church in Kansas City, Christ Church Anglican, part-time there.
What's your role there, by the way?
I'm the musical worship leader, and a bishop told me to say it that way. Musical worship leader. So yeah, and also I took some classes and became a spiritual director a handful of years ago as well. And so I try to, as I'm getting older, I try for my investments, I call them like stacked investments. So if I'm producing a record, it would be great if it served the church, or if I'm working with an artist, I don't think of it as artist development as much as maybe spiritual direct, or, at least both and kind of thing. And think of it as discipleship, or as, companioning, or, that sort of thing. And so, yeah. And also this hat, actually, this is a hat that my best friend gave me 7 years ago or something. And I was in a really sad time, which we're going to get to real fast here in a second. And it just came in the mail, and it's this kind of fancy, it's a Baldwin hat, which is a Kansas City specific company. And it was just, it came with this note, this really, intentional note that said something like, I feel like you feel like you are kind of untethered, or you're looking for a place to belong, or something like that. And just know that you will always belong with me. And if you're feeling that way particularly, put on this hat and remember it. And so it's really gross. It's a gross, like, it's a hat I would have gotten rid of, but on certain days, it feels like the right day to wear it.
I love that sentiment. I love that sentiment. Obviously, we want to get into the song that you chose. Here on The Deepest Cut, we interview songwriters about the song that's the most painful or difficult song to have written, of course, like on public record that they want to discuss. But before we do, like, I just know for you, there are different lanes in which you're even producing music for, like, under your own name, right? There's even a worship project for kids. There are, like you mentioned, church resources, for lack of a better word, or maybe that's the right word. Yeah, can you just kind of take us into, even these are my lanes there?
Yeah, I forgot about that hat, the one we're talking about. So around 2017, I don't call it worship music because it's fine in a Christian context to call it that. But on an airplane, when you sit down next to a stranger and you say, like, I make worship music, it doesn't mean anything to them, or it means the wrong thing often. Or I make Christian music. It's like, okay, but first let me apologize about Christian music and let me say I get it that, whatever, but it's not that, so I describe the music I'm primarily making as an artist as songs for churches to use, or songs for the church to use. And that is a lot clearer of an answer to that kind of airplane new friend. And so like I kind of have three different entities, both, as an artist, Greg Lafollette. I'm kind of making congregational church resources as well as kind of personal devotion tools, which is a weird, I know we're talking about art, so I'm very aware of that. And then I have a band with my wife called West Hype Manor, which is the name of the neighborhood we live in. And we've released a few songs and releasing more this year. And then I have a project called Always and Everywhere, which is resources for kids. I mentioned I work at a church, and I realized at some point, a couple years ago, that like a third of our congregation are children, elementary school children. And it was like, we have an amazing, family life team, but if they were singing along to videos, and when I was in the room with them, it was like, they are not enthused by this, And it really didn't take much for me to, like, I started going in and singing with them personally, just like I would do my, opening set in the service and then run over to the children's space and do a song with them. And I was just so impressed by them and encouraged, even singing a song like Come Thou Fount or something like that. I would teach them that what thou means, and maybe, hit Ebenezer real quick and like, here's what we're talking about, and I'd leave melodious for them to figure out. But yeah, man, like they were just up for it and so enthusiastic. And it was really inspiring to me just to be kind of in the room with them face to face, connected in that way. And I think it really helps them. And they deserve it. They're a third of our congregation. I want to pastor them in that way. And so I recorded some songs that I believe in and that are clear, but also I didn't want to, like, one of the downfalls of children's music, which is not what we're talking about today, but is that it oversimplifies and doesn't dignify the kids. And so I'm like a big Mr. Rogers guy. And so if you see me leading worship with kids, I'm usually like on my back, like a smashed bug playing the guitar and, whatever, playing Simon Says worship basically with them. And so getting, like, not only like condescending, in a dictionary term of it, like coming down to their level, but also like realizing, man, these kids probably understand the Trinity better than I do because of like all of this stuff. I don't know, I'm so cynical, I'm so biased by, my upbringing, whatever. It's like, I'm not afraid to explain the mystery, or to not explain, but put forth the mystery of the Trinity, because it's like, use your imagination. It's probably better than mine.
Yeah.
You guys got this figured out better than I do. So those are the three kind of primary places. I'm also producing records often for artists in that same kind of world.
I love that. By the way, as an aside, I just want to applaud the holistic nature of, like, you said, I'm the musical worship director here. It feels like a lot of churches pay their staff to get rid of the kids so that the adults can do what they need to do, kind of a thing. And the fact that someone in your role is holistically thinking, well, hey, if I'm musical worship director for this church and 1/3 of them are children, then we need to address the children just as much as we do any other group. That just feels very healthy and holistic to me. And I think that's applaudable for what you're doing there.
Amen, man.
Obviously, we want to talk about the song you chose, "Darkness is My Closest Friend." Where does that fit? I mean, you just said these are kind of the lanes I live in. Where does this fit in that? And then I'd love to go into, tell me about the origins of the song.
I think of the worship leader role not as just like a song leader, but I think of it as from a pastoral lens, and so I think of myself as a shepherd, and so I'm trying to address things that I think need to be addressed in sort of my circle, but of course, in often that translates to the larger capital C church and that sort of thing, and I think a psalm like Psalm 88 is so easy to appreciate from afar and be like, okay, yeah, it's good that there's darkness in our spirituality, or a reference to the realness of life, which of course includes death and darkness and sickness and tragedy. And um, I'm not going to mention the beautiful and counterbalancing things, because those ones are the easy ones to recognize, So it's me kind of putting forth um, this thing that can be easy to move past quickly, to kind of recognize but not want to spend time with. And I get that. Like, I'm not, there are times in life when we're forced to spend time in those places, and I don't think any of us would choose it. Maybe some, but I would never choose it. And so the lane it's kind of a pastoral lane where I'm like, I think I specifically, and I think my people and the church, could stand to spend some time in this world. Now, the idea of like the importance of lament is decades. There's been a solid decade of people saying like, hey, we got to do this. This is a huge part of the Psalms and a huge part of early spirituality and ways of relating to God. And yeah, I guess I'm not claiming that it's anything novel, but I do think it's probably something that we need to be reminded of pretty consistently, or it's easy to just kind of lose track of it. And I think we need to do that for ourselves, but also because it keeps us soft, it keeps us compassionate, it keeps us aware, even when we're not in that moment of tragedy. Someone else is guaranteed, and so keeps our eyes more open to see that. It gives us more grace for people if they're rude to us, in the grocery line for no reason. It's like, well, the actual reason is something brutal and horrible, So that's the reason. And then the origin of the song, I mean, it just came out of a season where, I was kind of waking up and spending time in the Psalms. It's probably been, if I, confessional here, it's probably been quite a few years since I've gotten outside of the Psalms in any meaningful way in interacting with the Bible. They're just like I just feel like I can relate to that part. And some of the parts, of course, there's quotables in Peter, or, and I do, one of my Lenten practices was reading a gospel account, which it had been a while and it's been nice. But the, like the rules for life and the order of life, those things have just felt, I don't know, more peripheral than how can I have a healthy relationship with myself and with God? And the Psalms help me to do that. And so this is one that, of course, when the S hits the F, when trouble strikes, this is one that can accompany you there.
Were you in such a season personally at the time, or were you just reflecting on the psalm?
Yeah. So I was in a season. There was an end to kind of a sudden end to a long relationship that I had a lot of hope in, and so it was, it's not once again not anything novel or new or not anything that hasn't happened to a zillion other people, but it hit me hard and threw me, and had to take like anxiety medicine for the first time in my life, and I had to just 12-step programs and support groups and stuff like that was kind of unprecedented for me a little bit. And so I think I found solace in not being alone, that like bad stuff happens to other people and tragic things happen to other people, and that's the secret of these kind of intimate, vulnerable songs, is that there is a companioning that happens with them.
Yeah, I think the resonance of the Psalms is in that connective tissue that they form. It's in the I'm in this too, sort of like whatever you can read into various Psalms.
Well, and I do think I think Scripture is open to us for that, for us to apply ourselves to it. And so, of course, this dude who wrote this psalm, I saw recently, it's spelled Heman, which is probably like I don't know how to pronounce it, but I've been saying He-Man over and over again. I don't know what he was going through, but I know it was brutal, and I think like, as I was feeling despairing or hopeless or helpless, him sharing his experience really helped. So I think most of the songs you've probably dealt with, these hardest songs for artists to write, I think a lot of them have very personal details. They're written in their words, their account, their hometown, their ex-lover's name, whatever. And songs like Brick by Ben Folds, or Fire and Rain, James Taylor, or like even Graceland, surprisingly, by Paul Simon, it has that she comes back to tell me she's gone, as if I didn't notice, as if I didn't know my own bed, as if I'd never noticed the way she brushed her hair from her forehead. And then this like striking, clearest communication. And she said, losing love is like a window in your heart. Everybody sees you're blown apart. Everybody sees the wind blow. I think often when we think of vulnerability, we're not thinking of someone setting someone else's words. And I think that's maybe one of the most interesting things about this song is it was me kind of applying my situation, but also using this other person's words. I think I do it for a couple of reasons. One, it protects me a little bit. It makes me not say things that maybe I would regret later, So yeah, just to be like totally honest, it is a little less vulnerable for me to not, divulge details or to, but it also, I feel like, just kind of keeps me between the ditches in my relationship with God. That being said, I often wonder if the psalmists were being sarcastic or regretted things they said in these moments. I know that as I have prayed to God, as I did pray to God in that season, I said some stuff that was not okay, like, yeah. So I'm not saying that there is like a censoring that's happening, but I do find comfort in kind of trying to live through these established means. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it that there are guardrails in place for this kind of thing. I will say this though, to me, the Psalms, like you just said, I've said some things that weren't okay. And yet when I read the Psalms, largely what I walk away with is everything's okay.
Yeah.
That in my ability to communicate with something bigger than me, to have this relationship, like I'm allowed to be fully myself and to bring all of that to bear in it. And the Psalms are kind of this account of that, right?
I mean, of course, yeah. And when I say not okay, I mean not suitable for public consumption.
Sure, of course.
I asked you before the podcast, can I curse? and God has answered that question, and he's okay with cursing, it turns out.
Sure.
But yeah, I think you're exactly right. Yeah, no holds barred, really. And this is maybe the best example of that in the whole Bible, where I feel like he's assigning blame. He's saying like, God, you did this. You put me into a pit. Not, I find myself, and this random evil has happened to me. It's like, no, you did this. You could have not done it, and you did it. What's up with that? I'm not okay with that. That makes me really mad. And I once again, it's like when we apply our situations to this, when I applied my situation to this, it's like, that's how I felt, man. I felt bitter and I felt mad. I felt like wronged. Beside feeling disappointed and disillusioned and those things, I felt like injustice and active emotions, not only grief or loss.
Yeah. And yet those things are sacred spaces too, right? They're canonized, they're memorized, they're celebrated and intended to be lived into as well, like any other psalm.
Yep.
Greg, this feels like the appropriate I'd love to let people actually hear what we've been talking about. I'd love to have you take us into your song.
Let me say one last thing. I think I can remember when I wrote this song thinking a lot of artists write laments or grief from the other side of it, or at least they deliver it from the other side of it. And so I remember feeling like if I was in a valley, there's a lot of resources and a lot of resources and a lot of art that's on the other side of the valley and back up on the other mountaintop and saying, yeah, I suffered back then, but look at me now. I made it through, which is giving hope. There's nothing wrong with it. I remember feeling like I want to share this in all of its sloppiness and all of its complexity, in its sort of just be raw, and there are just a lot of practical things, like it's hard to promote a record when it's hard to get out of bed, or it turns out you don't want to go and be in front of 100 people when you haven't showered in a couple days or whatever. So I get that, but I also do want to, I don't know, I find myself in the same place as everyone else. Like I'm past it in whatever ways I'm past it. I'm definitely not past it in some ways, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I just want to say to the people who are in the valley, because I'm with you. I want to say I'm with you as much as I can be. And I do know how it felt. And I maybe don't know how it feels right now to you, but I do know how it felt for me. And I know how it feels sometimes for me right now. And you're not alone. And I'm saying this to you. I'm not going to try to be overly simplistic and give you any sort of easy answer. I'm just saying that you're not the only one. So I'm Greg Lafollette. This is Psalm 88, Darkness is My Closest Friend.
My Father, I am all alone. I cannot find a friend. This sorrow has become my own. My tired eyes are dim. In grief, Lord, I'm calling out to you. I'm reaching for your hand. But darkness is my closest friend. Darkness is my closest friend. Darkness is. Your wrath is sweeping over me. Your terrors are too much. Darkness is my closest friend. Darkness is, darkness is, darkness is my closest friend. Darkness is, darkness is. You have completely covered me. You have completely covered me.
You've been listening to The Deepest Cut, part of the Rabbit Room Podcast Network. Audio production and theme music by Isaac Vining. Logo and identity work by Meg Cook. The Deepest Cut was created and hosted by me, Matt Connor. Thank you so much for listening.